And thank you for dialing into this week's installment of Tune In Tuesday. So for those of you tuning in for the first time, these are 15-minute health-oriented calls led by industry specialists like myself. And our goal is to give you more information or tools surrounding multiple ideas of health and how you can use them within your own lives. You can type any questions or comments you have in the chat box at any point. And today, the focus is going to be on Feel Well is the series, and this is going to be on optimism and resilience within. So we're going to talk a little bit about stress, and we're going to talk about one of what the research finds is the main variable in really withstanding and dealing with stress in a healthy way. So without further ado, since we got started a little bit late and I want to leave questions for afterwards, I'm going to get right into it. Okay, and at the end of the whole thing, we will have 2 minutes. So, all right. Okay, so here is a quote that I really think is interesting and really illustrates some of the things I'm going to talk about today. So resilience is characterized by the ability to bounce back from negative emotional experiences and by flexible adaptation to the changing demands of stressful experiences. So is anybody familiar with stress? I think it's one of those things that is an unavoidable part of daily life. So I want to kind of break down stress, what it is and what the experience actually is and what's happening to your body. So stress is an uncomfortable emotional experience accompanied by predictable biochemical, physiological, and behavioral changes. So that's kind of I don't know if you call it fancy, but a way of describing things that happen when you get stressed out. You get a little bit sweaty, you get tense, and you tend to be short-tempered or get upset easily or retreat, right? Behavioral changes. So when we sense danger or stress, whether it's real or imagined, your body's defenses kick into high gear in a rapid automatic process known as fight or flight reaction or the stress response. So this is when we get stressed out and we want to kick it into high gear and start really tackling the issue in front of us or trying to figure out what are we going to do with the stressful situation that's right in front of us. So not all stress is terrible, right? There's good, and that's the kind of stress that keeps one motivated. That's when you really care about something. It's the kind of stress that it kicks in and you're able to stay up later and do the work that you need to get done. Or, if your kid is running into the street, it's the reaction, the quick reaction that allows you to go and grab them or help people out. And then there's bad stress. And this is chronic stress which is distracting and demotivating and can have serious health consequences. Not only is it uncomfortable in the moment when we're experiencing it, but it's also, it can have reverberations later on. And if you tend to get stressed out and feel that spike in cortisol and all of those defenses coming to your rescue for something that might not necessarily need it, you can develop chronic stress. So you can have the same physiological reaction to your boss saying something or getting some negative feedback from a coworker or having a deadline coming up that you're not you fear that you're not going to be able to make. You can have the same physiological reaction as if you're trying to save somebody from getting hit by a car, and that is the kind of stress that we can feel that's maladaptive stress, right? So that's not something that's useful at that moment, but it feels like a life or death. So when we feel stress, it's really important for us to assess the situation in a way that we can actually function and begin to really tackle the issues at hand, what is right in front of us, and figure out if it's time to react or respond, right? So when it's something that's a life or death or a fight or flight, reacting is something that you have to do. But when it's not that, it's responding is a better way to deal with it. So I want to talk about resilience. And resilience is a little bit like that quote that I was sharing earlier. It's the ability to withstand and meet the demands of a stressful situation and also adjust to the evolving features of the situation. And resilience is how you grow and you learn from the challenges you face. And when you are resilient, you think of stressors as challenges rather than threats. And it also helps you in the face of uncertainty. So being resilient doesn't mean that you don't experience stress or difficulty or emotional pain or trauma, but it just means that you're able to assess the stressful situations in a way that you can be more productive. And anybody can learn how to be more resilient. And people have found that, research has found that resilient employees are better physically and mentally, and they're able to have a good work-life harmony. They're able to know when it's time to, spend more time at work and spend more time at home, and they feel okay about the decisions that they make. And one of the key variables in being resilient is optimism. So you've heard about the power of positive thinking probably as something that's important, and it's not like being delusional or being like, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. Everything's going to turn out fine when there are certain things in the situation that need to be handled. But so for instance, I want to share these things with you. They're called explanatory style. So there's a pessimistic thinking style and an optimistic thinking style. And I really want you guys to think about these things as thinking styles rather than as pessimistic person or an optimistic person. So these are the ways that we explain our situations to ourselves. So if you are stressed out, or say something happens where you have to give a presentation, right? And for some reason the presentation isn't going well. It didn't go well, and you suffer some kind of embarrassment, or you didn't get a client, or whatever it is. So if you have a pessimistic thinking style, you're going to think, well, what I did right now is going to last forever. That's permanent, pervasive. It's going to undermine everything that I've done so far in my career. Internal, it's all my fault, unquote, controllable. There's nothing you can do about it. But if you have more of an optimistic thinking style, you could say, you know what, this too shall pass. This wasn't great, but maybe I can learn from the experience. Specific, this is to do with just this one particular presentation or client or moment. I will improve next time. External, it's not entirely my fault. Well, maybe, I could ask my team for help, or it's not entirely the fault of what I have done at this moment. And controllable, there are things I can do to manage the situation. Maybe talk to a client, talk to your colleagues, and figure out how can we do better next time, as opposed to thinking this is a disaster and always will be a disaster. And a lot of times when people have a pessimistic thinking style, they fall into these common thinking traps. So instead of seeing the situation for what it is, they engage in black and white thinking, fortune telling, future tripping, mind reading, overgeneralizing, just always looking at the negative aspects of each situation. Anytime there is something that doesn't go the way that they want to, they tend to think of it as a permanent thing that's going to be just a horrible situation for them forever. But if you flip the script and try to think of things as a learning experience, as stressors, as challenges, rather than defining moments of who you are and how you work, and you start to think of challenges as something to meet rather than a threat to run from. You think about the things you can actually control in the situation and think about small steps that can lead to positive outcomes. You can ask questions rather than sit back and list all of the things that you've done wrong, because all of these thinking traps just exacerbate your stress and can cause chronic stress. So if you have difficulty assessing positive emotions in a moment, take a moment to sit back, think, and breathe, and have perspective. And try to flip the script for a realistically optimistic assessment. When I talk about engaging with optimistic thinking styles, it's not about being delusional and thinking, well, it's not my fault at all. I'm not going to take any responsibility, or I had nothing to do with this, or, it's not about being delusional. It's about, okay, some things went wrong here. It's not a defining moment of my entire career or my life, but what can I learn from it? So Any questions? You can type them in right here, and I would love to answer any questions about optimism, about stress management. Any questions about thinking styles? Did everybody understand what I meant by the fact that resilience? One of the main variables of resilience is optimism. Does anybody relate to any of these thinking traps? One of the things that I think is really interesting about optimistic thinking styles versus pessimistic thinking styles is that, when you do engage in pessimistic thinking styles, it multiplies the stress. So if you're feeling bad about something, just ruminating over what you did wrong can multiply the stress, can make you feel even more stressed out. It can make you feel even more hopeless, and it's very paralyzing. So optimism is really like, what is the best thing I can get out of this situation? Where is the lesson? Where is a tiny corner of what happened here that can be a learning opportunity rather than something that is a defining feature of why you are not doing well? And also, I think what's interesting about it is it's one of the common thinking traps if you're engaging in this pessimistic thinking style is overestimating danger. So it really, if you engage in these kind of pessimistic thinking patterns, you're not likely to go for things. You're not likely to take calculated risks and to thrive. And resilience is all about thriving, learning from something and then thriving. Okay, well, if there are no questions, you can always get in touch with me afterwards. Email me. My email is right here, info@shulamelamed.com. And I'd love to give you more information about resilience and optimism. Obviously, 15 minutes is not a very long time, but I really appreciate your time, and I welcome any questions. Okay.